Story 1. Change. Social turmoil. If you are rich and powerful, you want to keep everything as it is for as long as possible. That is why many liberal-minded people become conservative after gaining fame and wealth. Story 2. Aside from the jokes about taxes on property and capital gains, the really rich people I know are terrified of having their time wasted more than anything. When money is no longer an object or obsession, your priorities and fears shift to other things like ego and time management. Story 3. I know a lot of rich people, so I can answer this in a reasonable amount of detail. Losing it. Obvious, right? The degree to which some of them make paranoia their identity has to be seen to be believed, though. A lot of them have nothing to do but sit around and reflect on all the ways their lives can be taken from them. Each other. We know that rich people, meaning the oligarchs, not people who saved a few million, mostly hate the rest of us, right? It's true, but what is less publicized is that they also hate most other rich people. At fancy parties, no one is having a good time, but everyone has to pretend they are. Joining the super predator class doesn't make you immune to the vices and crimes of super predators. You're even closer to those people and more exposed. Sure, you can afford your favorite $7,500 a night hotel, until a billionaire buys the whole thing and bulldozes it. They have busted family dynamics invariably, and they have petty rivalries that go back generations. They take things away from each other for sport. Their kids failing. Regression to the mean is real, and upper-class social environments are often abusive. If you send your kids to an upper-class boarding school, the probability that they experience sexual abuse is about 50%. Most rich people hate the idea of raising a rich kid and all that entails, but recognize the disadvantages a child will have in socialization at high levels if he's not raised as one, and if he therefore doesn't have the baseless confidence that tends to lead to a person getting everything he wants. It's a catch-22. You either raise a horrible person who will be effective at getting what he wants in society, or a decent person who not only won't improve on your social level and achievements but will probably be seen as having stepped backward. A doctor or a lawyer or a teacher who lives on, but does not increase the family's wealth. Fame or the lack thereof, depending. This is the biggest difference between old and new money. New money fears irrelevance and the loss of the status, i.e. people flattering you, because first and second generation wealth is easier to swindle that new wealth and fame both bring. Those people crave attention. Old money, on the other hand, fears publicity of any kind. New money sees obscurity as failure. Old money sees obscurity, if you can live well, as success, because it means you don't rely on anyone's approval. A lot of people have brought up class war. Sadly, they don't fear us at all. They think of us as jokes. Their preparations for social breakdown, the Silicon Valley bunker builders, have more to do with a fear or fantasy of organic dysfunction of us suddenly losing the ability to execute the needs of society but not successful rebellion against them, the probability of which they consider to be extremely low. Their attitude is that, whenever trouble hits the fan, they'll be able to get away from it all and let the poor fight for what's left. They may be right and they may be wrong, I don't care to speculate on that. But the fact is that they think about us very little and they definitely are not afraid of us. Story 4. Death. This is the real answer. Everyone in a position of wealth and power realizes eventually that this is their only life. It doesn't matter what you believe in, as any higher power teaching process always shows that the rich and powerful only pay for their faults in the afterlife. The best way around this is to not believe in an afterlife. Thus, to them, this life is your only life. So, death always wins as the scariest thing possible. Story 5. Becoming poor, especially if they were born into a rich, privileged life and didn't actually earn the money themselves, terrifies them. Nothing scares them more than losing all their money and having to work a normal, boring job to survive like most people. Story 6. Control. They believe that if they relinquish the slightest control, the masses will catch on and notice that these masters of the universe aren't what they project to be. Story 7. Being poor. I know a guy who made nearly $1 million in one swoop, and within 5 years it was all gone. Now he's looking to sell his house, find an apartment to live in, has run all his new cars into the ground, and can't afford basic maintenance on them. Story 8. Not being rich, one of my clients continually scams people legally and is a high earner. He never thinks about the repercussion of his actions on others. He never uses his own money but uses others' money. But he is rich. Another client of mine can never downgrade his lifestyle. Story 9. I'm not rich, but I'm retired with a steady six-figure income without having to work again. I'm terrified that the United States is going to collapse soon. Story 10. They are terrified of change, such as losing any kind of power that you have had for so long that it only exists as a vague sublimation of self-identity. Change is hard. For the rich, it is the hardest. But if a guy like me can learn to live with change, with various future prospects flattened, then so can they. Hypothetically speaking. Story 11. Losing their money can be a significant fear for many. In some cases, the fear of being alone and never being cared for or understood is also prevalent. Let me tell you, it's hard to connect with someone who was born with money and socialized in a way that feels alien, especially when I grew up eating hot dogs on slices of bread. Story 12. Low birth rates. Fewer buyers, fewer servants, etc. A wealthy status is a condition that is created by the demands of the many for the concentrated resources of the few. Story 13. Lawsuits. I'm fortunate to be doing very well financially, but I always worry that someone will try to sue me for something and ruin my wonderful life. I have tons of insurance and a broad-range umbrella policy, but I also live in Los Angeles, where it seems like anyone with money becomes a target. Story 14. Money losing its value. Can you imagine if the world economy collapses for some reason like, massive crop failure due to climate change, and then the only thing that has value is food, guns, ammunition, medicine, and hiding places? Granted, the rich people have those things already, but they won't necessarily be able to keep them. The rich depend on the defense of their wealth by the middle class in exchange for some of that wealth. If the middle class no longer wants their money, they have a reason to stop defending the rich and might just start taking what they want from them instead, and invite some of their poor friends to do the same. Story 15. Taxes. They literally spend so much more on lobbying and campaign donations just to make sure their tax rate doesn't go any higher and the loopholes that allow them to hide their money remain. Story 16. They are terrified of having to pay their fair share of taxes. It would be nice if the ultra-rich millionaires and billionaires had to pay taxes at the same rate as I do, a retired person. Story 17. They are afraid of individuals attaining class consciousness and actually acting in concert. So much was made explicit by the aristocrats who argued for the United States Constitution. Different interests necessarily exist in different classes of citizens. If a majority be united by a common interest, the rights of the minority will be insecure. There are but two methods of providing against this evil. The one by creating a will in the community independent of the majority, that is, of the society itself. The other by comprehending in the society so many separate descriptions of citizens as will render an unjust combination of a majority of the whole very improbable, if not impracticable. The first method prevails in all governments possessing an hereditary or self-appointed authority. This, at best, is but a precarious security, because a power independent of the society may as well espouse the unjust views of the majority as the rightful interests of the minority party, and may possibly be turned against both parties. The second method will be exemplified in the Federal Republic of the United States. Whilst all authority in it will be derived from and dependent on the society itself will be broken into so many parts, interests, and classes of citizens that the rights of individuals or of the minority will be in little danger from interested combinations of the majority. Source: Federalist 51. Story 18. Rich people are scared of their way of life and resources going away. One of the things I hear a lot from people all my life is they can't understand why rich people want more money. That is the same reason these people are shocked their rent and living expenses rise all the time while their wages are either stagnant or can't keep up with their expenses. Story 19. Wealthy individuals have always harbored fears of their money becoming worthless in the event of societal collapse. This is especially concerning where the bottom 90% decide to retaliate against their greed in a lawless environment. They fear losing everything and being in mortal danger, a scenario that has occurred numerous times throughout history. Story 20. They are afraid of more wealthy individuals. The straightforward. If the wealthy are taxed and middle and low-income citizens have an equal playing field to potentially become wealthy, it disrupts the playground of the already rich. They are selfish individuals who think nobody should be wealthy but them. Forget them. Story 21. Poor people realize that they can elect someone to defend their economic interests, which is why they continuously distract people with social issues. The rich cannot get their economic agenda passed with a fair vote, so they run candidates on divisive issues. These mostly involve people getting angry that others are different from them, allowing those with an insincere social agenda to get elected and pass their unpopular economic agenda. Story 22. Being a former majordomo and estate manager for families of incredible wealth for 25 years, I can confidently say that all of the wealthy people whom I have known were afraid of one simple thing: being unhappy. They couldn't understand how, being able to afford anything, the only thing that they couldn't afford was happiness. Story 23. Being held to the same standards as those who are not rich involves personal responsibility, no special treatment, and paying a reasonable percentage of income tax. Additionally, their opinions should not be met with undue adoration and so on. Story 24. Losing their money and therefore their power, they are afraid of common people realizing that they can change things by unionizing. That is what wealthy individuals are truly afraid of, and they spend all kinds of resources to prevent people from getting organized. Story 25. The working class realizing how screwed they are. George Pullman, famous industrialist of the mid to late 1800s, realized this when he was about to die. Fearing that some of his former employees or other labor supporters might try to dig up his body, his family arranged for his remains to be placed in a lead-lined mahogany coffin, which was then sealed inside a block of concrete. At the cemetery, a large pit had been dug at the family plot. At its base and walls were 18 inches of reinforced concrete. The coffin was lowered and covered with asphalt and tar paper. More concrete was poured on top, followed by a layer of steel rails bolted together at right angles, and another layer of concrete. The entire burial process took 2 days. His monument, featuring a Corinthian column flanked by curved stone benches, was designed by Solon Spencer Beeman, the architect of the company town of Pullman. Story 26. Nothing except the fear of being poor again. This fear is what drives them to accumulate more and more, millions upon millions, because they can never have enough. It's like a drug that takes over, similar to Gollum and his precious. This obsession warps their perception of everyone, leading them to believe, they're all out to get my money. Story 27. Wealthy individuals frequently fear losing their wealth and status. The pressure to maintain their lifestyle can be immense. They might also worry about being targeted or judged because of their success, which can create a sense of insecurity and isolation. Story 28. That's like asking Bill Gates what a homeless person is afraid of. As if he would have a clue. We, as ordinary people, have just as much clue about rich person problems. Story 29. Us waking up and realizing that we have all the power. We could revolt and destroy billions, we could vote out corporate sycophants, we could just stop over-consuming and let their precious money machines die. Like picking a corporation and destroying it via boycott. We could eat the rich. Story 30. The governmental elites in the American government are currently attacking abortion rights because millennials and older Generation Z are not having children at a rate that will replenish the working class, and they are terrified of losing that. Story 31. Besides financial losses, I think I would be scared that everyone around me is fake, whether it's friends or family. Anyone that would be close to me could terrify me with the thought of being alone. Story 32. Poor people becoming more educated, starting their own businesses, and taking wealth away from the ultra-rich and fortifying the middle class. That's why conservatives are always cutting funding for education. They know that keeping the population less educated works in their favor. Story 33. Spending money. I have done work for very rich people, and they do everything they can to avoid paying bills. They will buy the cheapest products and will try to find the most affordable option for everything. Story 34. The rest of humanity, as soon as they figure out why there are only a handful of super-rich while so many people with stable jobs can't pay for childcare or save for retirement. Story 35. The subreddit Glow UPS is disappointing. They banned me from their page because I've commented on not safe for work posts before and said they're protecting children. I'm all for protecting children, but all I did was comment on a post and now I'm banned. This is incredibly stupid. Story 36. Someone told me last week that when people have so much money that they don't worry about normal people things like paying bills and grocery shopping, they start to worry about really weird stuff that is usually unhinged. Their source is being a custom home builder for the mega wealthy. Story 37. The rich are much more terrified of the middle class than of the poor. They have spent the last several decades trying to eradicate the middle class and make everyone poor.